p.m. on Monday, November the 9th, 2020. Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. The senators and all in attendance will please stand and be led in an invocation by the Honorable Siobhan S. Donovan, 12th Senatorial District. Following the invocation, all will please remain standing and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America by Tara Perkinson, Chief Deputy Clerk, Senate Clerk's Office.
Good afternoon. Let's bow our heads in prayer. God, thank you for the men and women who serve our country in leadership roles and for their families. Please provide our leaders with reminders each day of why they decided to dedicate their lives to public service and use that commitment to encourage them. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call the roll. All those in attendance, please record their vote aye. Clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. President. Senate Journal for Friday, October 16, 2020.
Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 34, noes 5.
Ayes 34, noes 5. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the House of Delegates.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The clerk will report any communication from the governor.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any other business to come in the morning hour? Seeing none, the clerk will call the calendar. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Sasslaw. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. How are you on this fine day?
Good afternoon, Senator. Doing well. Hope you are too.
We'll see if that persists. I would respectfully ask that the Senate stand in recess until 3:30 and that the Senate Republicans retire to the prayerful hallway where we will have a very brief conversation.
Thank the Senator. Okay. All right. Without objection, the Senate will stand in recess until 3:30 p.m.
I put a nail in my foot last night, so I ended up at the ER because I was.
Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Is there any other business to come in the morning hour? Seeing none, the clerk will call the calendar.
Mr. President.
So, Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Mr. President, could the journal please reflect that the senator from Roanoke County is away on pressing personal business?
Thank the Senator. The journal will so reflect. The clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Monday, November the 9th, 2020. Bills in conference. House Bill 5146. No report. Senate Bill 5043. No report. Senate bills with governor's recommendations. Senate Bill 5029.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I agree. I want to agree with the governor's substitute. Adopt the governor's substitute. Adopt the governor's recommendations.
The
Yes,
Senator
sir.
want to speak to that motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I know that there were some things in the bill that created some problems for law enforcement, and so after conferring with the governor's staff, I agreed that it was the right thing to do.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose, Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal rise?
Mr. President, rise for a parliamentary inquiry.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, do I understand that the motion on each of, in this case, 3 amendments is to approve the governor's recommendation and is not a motion on the bill in its entirety?
That's correct, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Steph, rise?
Mr. President, speaking to the bill and amendments.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I read an article recently called "What's Behind Virginia's Increased Pedestrian Death Toll and How to Reverse That Trend." I represent the largest city in Virginia that sees more than 20 million annual visitors. Pedestrian safety is among the top priorities. Just a few weeks ago, a pedestrian was struck and killed as he walked along Virginia Beach Boulevard. Sadly, this isn't some isolated incident. According to the Virginia Beach Police Department, 51 crashes involving pedestrians have occurred in the city this year. 6 ended in fatalities. So you may ask, how's that related to this bill? And what has the General Assembly done to help? So let me explain it this way. During this special session, we've removed the authority of police officers to enforce laws that help keeps pedestrians safely out of the roadway. Actually, it's even worse. The new legislation will prevent law enforcement officers across the state from taking any action on pedestrians that carelessly or even maliciously being somebody that's intent on doing some harm, from interfering with orderly passage of vehicles. Mr. President, once again, legislative action was taken under the guise of police reform. I wonder how many more pedestrians will die because police are now prohibited from taking action when they see a pedestrian that's carelessly or maliciously in the roadway. The governor's already trying to correct one problem with these bills, and I'm here to highlight another. Mr. President, we're only 8 weeks from the regular session, but the rush of the majority to push this and other legislation through is going to result in costly mistakes similar to this one, and that's a real disservice to the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and there's going to be more deaths because of it. And Mr. President, I can't support this until we fix all the problems with this bill, and this is just one of them. Thank you.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 5029?
Mr. President,
Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
could the 3rd amendment be severed from the other 2?
Without objection, the Third Amendment will be severed. So with regard to Amendments 1 and 2, the question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor? All in favor of amending the bill in accordance with the recommendation of the governor? amend the bill in accordance with the recommendation of the governor for amendments 1 and 2 will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The bill is amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor for amendments number 1 and 2.
Amendment number 3.
Okay. With regard to amendment number 3, the question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor? All in favor of the motion will say
Mr.
aye, will
President.
record their vote aye.
Mr. President.
Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Would the senator from Portsmouth yield for a question?
Senator Yield.
I'll do my best, Mr. President.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, don't mean to slow the train up, but I'm trying to understand the language, but it looks like the governor struck language that says if an offense regarding ownership, meaning a person doesn't actually legally own the vehicle, that could result in them going to jail occurs, then law enforcement cannot stop them if we agree to the governor's language. Is that the senator's interpretation?
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, that is my interpretation, but he's an attorney, and his interpretation is probably better than mine, but I'd say yes.
Further question?
Mr. President, I thank the senator's confidence in my legal abilities. And hopefully she'll follow my negative vote.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor regarding amendment number 3? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. The bill is amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor regarding amendment number 3.
Senate Bill 5034.
Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we agree with the governor's recommendations.
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President and ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. This bill is the earned sentence credit bill. The governor has recommended several technical amendments and recommended extending the effective date of the legislation and the associated report by 6 months. And I move that we agree with these amendments.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 5034? Seeing none, the question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 17.
Ayes 22, no 17. The bill is amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor.
Senate Bill 5080.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move to agree to the governor's recommendation and to explain that recommendation from the governor.
Senator, has the floor.
Mr. President, this was a bill that was passed without opposition, I believe, during the session. There is an emergency clause that is added to it to have it be effective immediately. What the bill does is it deals with telemedicine services and requires that DMAS and others provide coverage from a telemedicine perspective, regardless of where the patient is, including within the patient's home, and providing services, and does not, basically prohibits having to have any technology associated with that to be able to receive that reimbursement. That was passed unanimously, I think, in this body during the session, and I reiterate my motion to agree with the governor's recommendation.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 5080? Seeing none, the question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The bill is amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor.
Senate Bill 5088.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Evan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we agree with the governor's recommendations. And speaking to that motion,
Senator, the floor.
the governor proposes to do three things to this bill. This is the rental payment plans bill. One is it removes a provision stating the late fees would be included in the payment plan. That was not what we had done in the budget, and that shouldn't have remained in one portion of the bill. Secondly, he proposes that the tenant has 14 days instead of 5 days after written notice is served to pay the rent before the landlord terminates the rental agreement and obtains possession, again, consistent with what we did in the budget. And lastly, adds an emergency clause, so this would take effect immediately.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 5088?
Mr. President.
Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, could I request that items number 1 and 2 be severed from 3 and 4?
Without objection, Amendments 1 and 2 will be severed from Amendments 3 and 4. Question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor regarding Amendments 1 and 2? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 2.
Ayes 37, noes 2. The bill is amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor regarding Amendments 1 and 2. Question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor regarding Amendments 3 and 4? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 17.
Ayes 22, noes 17. The bill is amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor regarding Amendments 3 and 4.
Mr. President.
Senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having voted on the prevailing side where we accepted the amendments to Senate Bill 5034, I would ask that we reconsider that vote.
Question is, shall the vote by which the bill was amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor regarding Senate Bill 5034 be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having explained the amendments previously, I move that we accept the governor's recommendation.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. The bill is amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor.
That's all we have.
Okay. Stand in recess.
Probably going to be long.
Senate will be at ease for 15 minutes. Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I had inquired of Madam Clerk about trying to use the time that we have available as the House is sitting at ease and having conversations. And I shared with her, Mr. President, that I knew there were at least two of us who wanted to use a point of personal privilege, and if this would be an appropriate time to do that.
Thank the senator. Without objection.
Mr. President, I'm turning around so that I can see a majority of the body. One of the things that I've learned is over here that regardless of where I stand, my back seems to be against someone. Mr. President, when I was an English history major at an otherwise engineering school, it was my first introduction in one of the English literature courses to a gentleman that we all know by the name of Rudyard Kipling. And it was my first introduction to the poem, If. And it started out, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for those doubting too. It did cause me to reflect just a little bit, because I think there is only one senator that has been in the Senate longer than I have, and we know who that antique is. And there are two members that came in with the class of '92, of which I was the least distinguished member on that. I don't think that I have, during my legislative career, ever seen such a period of turbulence and urgency to pass certain legislation. And the term that came back to my mind, which I did not learn in an English class, but learned in a military science class, was called precipitous intervention. And what that means in that world is that things are done without careful investigation or comprehensive consideration. And I'd like to give you just a couple of examples of it, one of which we addressed earlier that the senator from Portsmouth offered, and that was Senate Bill 5029, driving without lights. Consider this, and I remember speaking against this bill when it came through, that we were going to stop state troopers from having the ability to stop someone on Saturday morning at 2 a.m. driving down Interstate 95 with their headlights off. They were not going to be able to stop this person, and it made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. But there were those who wanted that bill passed as part of an overall package, but they really did not consider the ultimate consequences that would result in that bill. Another situation coming a little bit closer to home that may make some of you uncomfortable. I remember a number of years ago when we were having a rather contentious discussion that had a taint of racial involvement in it, when one of the members in front of others called me a white redneck MF. And I really wasn't offended by it, because I realize that people say things when they are under pressure or they are emotional. But a lot of times, Mr. President, when we say or do things, we don't know page 2, or we don't know what's going on through that individual's mind. And here's what offended me. Not the vulgarity, not the fact that I was called a redneck. I do wear JCPenney suits, so that makes me a redneck maybe. It was the fact that it was said about my mother as she was dying. And that's what I took offense at. but that other person did not know it. So, as Rudyard Kipling was saying, that I needed to reflect about what others might have thought or not known. Mr. President, a situation much, much closer to us. I can recall in 2019, Mr. President, when you were accused of some vile crimes by two individuals, and that there was a feeding frenzy from the media on that resulted in some unfortunate consequences to you, that you were asked to resign from a board at Duke. Your law firm wanted to place you on a leave of absence, and it was done without any investigation, any collaboration, or any hearing whatsoever. And it just didn't seem right to me. And as a matter of fact, some of you may recall at the end of the 2019 session, I, on the floor of the Senate, thanked you for your professionalism and your objectivity and constraining the emotions that I know you and your family were going through. And I meant it sincerely. Mr. President, you responded with a soliloquy from the dais and expressed not just your concern, but your outrage at how the media was grasping on to an unsubstantiated and an uncorroborated accusation against you that was inflicting harm on you and your family. And one of the things you suggested was that this was a media lynching. Mr. President, another situation. There's a small school out in Ohio, which back in 2016 had a situation that should cause us to pause. And very near the campus of that liberal arts college was a grocery store that had been there for generations. The proprietor of the grocery store noticed a black student that came in that made a modest purchase but was trying to shoplift 2 bottles that were underneath the individual's coat. The proprietor tried to use his camera to take a picture of the individual, and the young man snatched the camera away and ran outside. The proprietor went after him to try to restrain him, and can you imagine what happened? The young man who tried to commit the theft, along with 2 other students, ended up beating the stuffings out of this man in a park right across from the store. And the students went back and said this was as a result of racism and racial accusations directed at these 3 black students. The very next day, hundreds of students from that school stood out and picketed and boycotted that store because of the racial accusations that were made. It was very interesting. The dean of students and other members of the administration participated in it, and it was published in the student newspaper that was widely disseminated, and the college terminated all business relationships that it had with that store based upon the accusations of those students. Fast forward, the student who was accused of trying to shoplift and steal things ultimately pled guilty to a criminal offense. The student who tried to steal the goods ended up writing out that the proprietors and owner of that grocery store had done nothing racially, had made no accusations, and they were absolved of it whatsoever. What were the consequences? The owners of the grocery store filed a civil lawsuit against the college, and got a judgment for $44 million against the college because the accusations were unsubstantiated. But as a result of what initially happened, there were an emotional furor that created all that. And I suggest to you once again that sometimes independent corroboration is a very important thing. What's that got to do with VMI? I'll tell you what it's got to do with it, Mr. President, is I read with great objectivity the letter that came from the governor on the governor's stationery that was signed by 10 individuals. And it started out in the first paragraph and used some very powerful language. Appalling culture. Talked about a systemic situation. And I suggest to you, Mr. President, based upon those 4 examples that I just shared with you, that we ought to have some reflection, because I think there was a precipitous perception that came about. And what really struck me were a couple of things. On the letter, which was signed by 10 individuals, I could not help but think about the inconsistencies with what had gone on with some of those individuals as opposed to what they were stating in this letter. And let me say, there are some legitimate concerns that need to be addressed in that letter. But first of all, it was signed on the governor's stationery, Ralph S. Northam. You know, in the twilight of my career, my memory has gotten very faint and is not as acute as it used to be. But I remember when the governor was accused of blackface. Day one, he admitted it was him, and asked for forgiveness. Day two, he comes back and says, no, it was not me. It was not me, and we need to do an independent investigation on it. But I did do it in Texas, so that makes it okay, because I didn't do it in Virginia. I did it in Texas. It's okay. I suggest to you that an independent investigation was done, and it came back inconsequential. A second signature on it was, Mr. President, was yourself. And I just shared with you the agony that I know you and your family went through when you were unjustifiably accused. And then who else signs it? The Attorney General of Virginia, another individual who admitted he had done blackface, but he was more skilled than the governor in managing to suppress it so it could not get into the public arena. It's interesting that there are a number of names on this letter who immediately called for the resignation of the governor of Virginia without any investigation, without any more explanation, and the governor did not do that. And I suggest to you, it was another example of a precipitous perception that was created. The interesting thing about the Attorney General, other than the fact that he acknowledged what he did, and I doubt if there are many of you in here that know this, that some of the accusations and some of the factual recitations of things that have happened at VMI were reviewed, and the Attorney General's on-site Deputy AG was involved in them and signed off on them. And in a number of instances, that Deputy AG told VMI, you have got to downgrade, you have got to reduce the punishments that you are trying to impose for these highly inflammatory and inappropriate racial remarks and comments. You cannot punish them that hard. And I'm not going to ask you to put your hand up on how many of you knew that, because I know not one of you know that. I suggest to you, Mr. President, that sometimes, even in turbulence, in chaos, that a little bit of opportunity to allow an investigation to take place and for the facts to be put on the table, I think it would have made you feel better. It would have made the governor feel better. and I just suggest to you, the letter went to the Board of Visitors of VMI, and I will tell you, I am involved in some of the crisis management on this. Immediately, the Board of Visitors accepted with great reluctance on a unanimous vote the resignation of General P., who is a true military hero in Virginia. I bet not many of you have taken a look at the Constitution of Virginia, but I'm trying to put something in perspective. Article 5, Section 7, the governor of Virginia is the commander-in-chief of all of Virginia's armed forces. When a letter comes from the governor saying, I have lost confidence in you, the general must resign because the governor is his commander-in-chief, and he did so. The Board of Visitors accepted it. The Board of Visitors immediately said, we are taking down the Stonewall Jackson statue on it, and we are embarking on a greater investigation on what we need to change from a cultural standpoint. The relevancy of all this, and I wrap it up, Mr. President, is this. When I hear terms bannered around about defunding, I hear terms kicked around about relevancy. Here are a couple of really brief points. Michael LaCoyle, he was a Rhodes Scholar from VMI who came from Kenya, where his father was a corn farmer of the poorest and destitute family. He came to VMI and became a Rhodes Scholar. He wanted to go to med school to go back to Kenya to deliver medical services. He had no money. The members of one particular class got a group of VMI graduates who had all graduated before VMI was integrated, and they put up $10,000 each every year to get him through med school. And he went back to Kenya. So I say to you, Michael LaCoyle, say his name. But fast forward it a little quicker. Anika Tice, and I don't know if anyone in here has ever heard Ms. Tice's name. She graduated in May of 2020. She is commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army. But before she goes on active duty, Mr. President, she has gone to Africa because she was a Fulbright scholar. A Fulbright scholar, and she wanted to go back to pay some of her, what she felt was her dues on it. The interesting thing, as you might discern from this, she was a young black lady who came from some very challenging backgrounds. And I say to you, say her name. But the interesting thing, and you will probably see something in writing from me a little later on about relevancy. Let me tell you about relevancy in 2020. Ms. Tice, Fulbright Scholar. Do you know what school had more Fulbright Scholars than any public or private college in Virginia? More than UVA, more than William & Mary, more than Hampton University, more than University of Richmond, VMI. But do you know this? VMI had more Fulbright Scholars in 2020 than any public or private university or college in America. In America. That's relevancy. So I suggest everyone, including myself, needs to take a deep breath. We need to stop hyperventilating. We need to allow this investigation to go forward and for the results to come out and to be made public. And I do hope they will not be sequestered under that language that says it's exempt from FOIA, because I think everyone needs to know what the findings are of that independent evaluation are. And I suggest, Mr. President, taking some comments that you made in 2019, we cannot let the media lynch VMI. Thank you, Mr. President.
For what purpose does the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Staff, rise?
Mr. President, since we've been here now 70-something days, I brought up a few individuals that have been released by the parole board. Today, I'm going to bring up another one, Stephen Lee Clark. In 2016, Clark was denied parole. He was denied again in 2017, 2018, and on June 30th of 2019. Interestingly, on the 2019 parole report, where it talks about the decisions of the report, there was no mention of the specific crimes he had committed. But Clark was denied in part for the serious nature and circumstances of his offense. But to find out what his offense was, you have to go back 4 years to 2016 to see that Clark's crimes were in fact first-degree homicide and robbery. Mysteriously, these crimes dropped off the monthly parole report in 2016, almost like the parole board didn't want you to understand or didn't want Virginians to know that they were releasing another violent offender. The parole board concluded after him serving 32 years, Clark would be denied parole because he had poor institutional adjustments. For example, motivation, attitude, unfavorable reports, lack of program involvement, etc., etc. Release at this time would diminish the seriousness of his crimes. We've heard these before. The serious natures and circumstances of his offenses, of his prior failures, and of convictions while under community supervision indicate that he's unlikely to comply with conditions of release. But you know the story. On July 22nd of this year, let everyone out of jail, the board decided to grant Clark parole. And today, after checking the offender locator and on the Department of Corrections website, it would appear that Mr. Clark is no longer in custody. So here's some facts. January 28, 1984, 24-year-old Stephen Lee Clark and his two accomplices decided to rob, shoot, and kill in cold blood Clark's former co-worker, a 69-year-old Garland McDonald. Clark, armed with a .22 rifle, went to Mr. McDonald's home and shot him twice in the chest and once in the hand. 2 shots to the chest were both described as lethal, penetrating his liver and his lung. Clark and the others fled the scene, at which time Mr. McDonald crawled 500 feet to a nearby service station. Mr. President, I pause for a minute because Mr. McDonald was bleeding out. He told the people at the service station who had shot him, and since Mr. McDonald had lived with Clark at the time, there was no doubt for over an hour, no doubt who shot him. It was Clark. For over an hour, medical personnel attempted to revive Mr. McDonald before he finally succumbed to these fatal wounds. Clark was found guilty by a jury and sentenced by the Circuit Court of Frederick County to life imprisonment for first-degree murder, 10 years for conspiracy to commit robbery, 10 years for attempted robbery, and 2 years for the use of a firearm in the commission of a murder. Total life plus 22 years. Mr. Clark, 61 years old, and if he lives the average life expectancy of a man, he should be able to enjoy another 18 years of freedom. By my calculations, Clark didn't even serve half of his sentence. Clearly, though, in Virginia, life plus 22 years is equivalent to just 36 years. Another convicted murderer is free. Mr. President, when is it going to stop? When is the governor, the administration, you and the majority going to help the victims and have compassion for these victims instead of for the criminals? When are we going to stop allowing the parole board to let these hardened criminals, rapists, murderers, child sexual predators into our neighborhoods? What is life in prison? We've let individuals out with life plus 22 years. 3 life sentences plus 118 years. What's it going to take, Mr. President? What's it going to take for compassion toward the victims instead of compassion toward the criminals? Thank you.
Do any other senators wish to be heard on a personal point of privilege? Senate will be temporarily at ease. Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would move that we waive the reading of the communications from the House.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 30, noes 4.
Ayes 30, noes 4. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived.
House Bill 5005.
Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe.
Mr. President, I move that we agree to the governor's recommendations, and further,
Senators, the floor.
Move that the amendments be placed in a block, that any senator desiring to remove an amendment from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the amendment.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the amendments be placed in a block? If any senator desiring an amendment be removed from the block, they will please do so after the clerk has read the number of the amendment. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are placed in a block.
Amendment number 1. Amendment number 2 is not before us. Amendment number 3.
Mr. President.
Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, could amendment number 3 come out of the block, please?
Without objection, amendment number 3 will be removed from the block.
Amendment 4 is not before us. Amendment 5. Amendment 6.
Mr. President,
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, would you be so kind to have amendment number 5 removed from the block, sir?
Without objection, amendment number 5 is removed from the block.
Amendment 6 is not before us. Amendment 7.
Mr. President, could that come out of the block?
Senator from
please?
Accomack.
Could that come out of the block?
Without objection, amendment 7 will be removed from the block.
Amendment 8.
Mr. President, can Amendment 8 come out of the block, please?
Without objection, amendment 8 is removed from the block.
Amendment 9. Amendment 10.
Question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the governor's recommendations regarding amendments number 1, number 9, and number 10? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 2.
Ayes 37, noes 2. The bill is amended in accordance with the governor's recommendations for amendments number 1, 9, and 10.
So amendment number 3.
Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I had been asked by the Chair of Finance and the administration to speak to amendment number 3, and as I read it, I will explain it, but I'm not sure I'm actually a proponent of it. Let me explain. In conference, and I think it was perhaps the will of this Senate, that we wanted to send specific instructions in certain areas to the administration. And I have a lot of respect for the Commissioner of the Department of Health. I consider him an ally, and I think he's doing a good job. However, the language that we included in conference would basically ensure that priority testing for COVID residents and employees of nursing and assisted living facilities, well, that it would be a priority. The administration wants to eliminate that priority testing and leave it to the department as far as their process for planning and prioritizing the COVID testing. So I think I've done my job, and if anybody wants to speak otherwise, I would call upon them to do that.
Mr. President.
Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I'm a little less confused on this. I'm sure I'm opposed. Mr. President, when we came down here, we had a number of bills, and this was one of them. We let those bills go by the wayside because we determined to put this important language into the budget. And, Mr. President, I'm just here to tell you that I know that Republicans and Democrats have come together on this point. We passed one of the bills together, sent it to the House. They didn't take it up. This, I think, is a critical, important item for us. Remember that those individuals, the deaths from COVID over age 60 are 89%. A big chunk of the deaths from COVID have been throughout the period of time over or a little above or a little under 50%. 50% for those that are living in the assisted living areas or in nursing homes. All we said is combine the bills that we tend to agree to, put it into the budget, and say that we should give priority to those individuals when they came out. And it didn't come from nowhere. The nursing home industry asked us to give that priority. And while I understand the Department of Health has had many struggles and otherwise, this is one that I think we should have consensus on, and I would hope that we would kindly reject the governor's amendment as it relates to item 299.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman. Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise actually to speak in favor of the governor's amendment.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make 2 points. The Department of Health is, of course, prioritizing the availability of the COVID-19 vaccines. They do have a regulatory framework. Certain criteria have to be met. Vulnerable populations are certainly part of that, and nursing home residents and employees are prioritized in that regulatory process. I think what the administration is saying, what the governor's attempted to say, is he still needs flexibility in setting the prioritization for the availability of what may be scarce resources. And I remind my colleagues, there are hot spots other than just nursing homes. I mean, we've had, right here in Virginia, meat and poultry plants, detention facilities, correctional facilities, hospitals, and colleges. And if we push the economy a little bit further and we start reintegrating again, similar to what we once considered normal, child care centers and other facilities may have to creep up on the priority list. So I too agree with my colleagues. Certainly long-term care facilities and assisted living facilities have to remain at the top and should always remain at the top. But it's a question of giving our scientists and our healthcare experts the flexibility to really follow what's going on and to make some amendments without having binding language in a budget. So with those remarks, I hope you would find it within yourself to continue to give the governor flexibility, and hopefully Virginia will be as aggressive as we can possibly be in managing the COVID crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is the junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Kiggins, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak in opposition to the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
I've spent a lot of time just going over the Virginia Department of Health website as well, with a lot of science and statistics and all the numbers that we all like to look at so much. And if you look at the total number of deaths in Virginia, 3,713 as of today. 1,817 of those deaths are from long-term care facilities in Virginia. We've had 13,158 cases in our long-term care, and as the Center from Bedford said, almost 50% of our deaths in Virginia are from our most vulnerable population, our long-term care facilities. We've had 507 outbreaks out of 1,354 outbreaks in the state are in these facilities. So my question is, why are we removing this language that says, to prioritize? Because this vulnerable population absolutely needs this priority. Even today, they had a article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch that talked about just how the COVID cases are rising in many states out there, in many of our surge states. For the week ending of October 5th, 1 in 6 nursing homes in surge states did not have the reported testing, did not report having tested staff the week prior. During the same period, nearly 1 in 5 nursing homes reported shortages of basic protective supplies, such as masks and gowns. Nearly 1 in 4 facilities reported a nursing staffing shortage. So this problem is not going away for our long-term care facilities. We've got cold and flu season approaching. It's absolutely going to get worse, possibly for our population, but absolutely for these guys who are not allowed to leave and are in this congregate setting. I've delved and just poured over the Virginia Department of Health guidance on testing for COVID-19, and they do categorize it, not to get too much in the weeds, but high priority for testing, and they list, which populations, and I know, we mentioned other congregate settings from correctional facilities and different congregate populations, but there is no doubt in my mind, as a person who comes from that world and that community, that this is absolutely our most vulnerable population. These people have to be protected at all costs, and having that wording priority for just goes a long way and makes the statement and sends the right message to the Commonwealth. So thank you so much, and I suggest that everyone oppose this amendment as well.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Russell, Senator Chafin, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak against this amendment.
Senator's the floor.
And, Mr. President, I carry this exact bill, the bill that was designed to make a priority for testing in nursing homes and those type of assisted living facilities. And I remember when I spoke in here in this chamber, I remember that after I spoke, there were those who were assembled on video, and they virtually commented against the bill. And the administration had some people that spoke against the bill from the health department. And I was looking around the room here, and I could see my colleagues, and they were scratching their head, and they had a look of consternation on their face, and I knew that they were thinking like I was thinking. And I heard several of the members here comment, I don't know why in the world we wouldn't do this. I don't know why in the world we wouldn't do this. And so, Mr. President, this is not a partisan issue. This is not something that ought to be dividing this chamber. This bill, the bill that I carried, sailed out of here without a single no vote. And when it got to the other chamber, it met significant resistance. I attended that committee meeting virtually while I was visiting my daughter in Pennsylvania, and it died a quick death. But I was very gladdened at heart when I saw that the governor had indeed put the money in the budget, had the money in the budget, and was going to do this in the budget. I was very gladdened, or the budget that came out of here, I was very gladdened about that. It made me happy. I suspect a lot of people, maybe all, and I hope all, came here to try to do the right thing. And an old senior statesman talked to me when I first was elected, and he told me, always look out for the people that can't look out for themselves, Mr. President. And these seniors, these elderly people, we owe them a debt. They have worked, they have paid their taxes, they have done their due. They have been good. And we now know a lot more about COVID-19 than we did at the beginning. And we know that it's not just hotspots that we're worried about. In fact, when it comes to these facilities, they're not hotspots if it gets there. They're death spots, and the statistics show it. The statistics prove it. So, you know, I hope that everybody will put their finger, this one right here, your index finger, on the right button, right where their heart is on this issue, because it's a big issue. It's a big issue for us to do the right thing for the people that can't take care of themselves. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Western Fairfax? Senator Marsden rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. To address the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, part of governing is, I think, communicating to people that we hear what's going on, we pay attention to what's going on, we deal with our most vulnerable, and I thought this was a reasonable bill. I certainly understand why the governor wants to have the greatest amount of flexibility. I truly appreciate that, but I had a facility in my district that lost 59 people, 59. And this virus is still out there. Although these homes and nursing facilities are much better prepared now to deal with it, I think we need to send the message that we heard what happened, we heard who our most vulnerable folks were, and I think it's incumbent upon us to stick with the bill that we passed, and I would ask that we reject the governor's amendment.
Thank the senator. What purpose, Senator from Henrico? Senator Donovan, rise.
Mr. President, I rise to speak to the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
I would like to endorse the mood that I'm hearing in the body today about not supporting this amendment. I, too, have a nursing home with over 50 deaths, and in the beginning of the COVID crises, Canterbury, which I know you've all heard of, had almost all the deaths in Henrico. And this is an incredibly vulnerable population. We've heard the statistics from the senator from junior senator from Virginia Beach. But it seems to me that if we are all in consensus that this is the highest risk population, that they should be triaged first to receive both testing and vaccinations, that the idea that it's more convenient for the Department of Health to not be encumbered by recommendations from this body does not seem to outweigh the importance of what we are here to do. And that is to speak out on behalf of the families in our districts that watch their family members die when they could not even go to their funerals or say goodbye or see them. This is a population that must be protected. We are all in agreement. This amendment should come out, and I hope your finger will follow your heart, as suggested by the senator from Russell.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding governor's recommendation number 3? Seeing none, question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the governor's recommendation number 3? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 15, noes 24.
Ayes 15, noes 24. The bill is not amended.
Amendment number 5.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in support of adopting the amendments to amendment number 5, sir.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the courtesies in you listening very politely to the soliloquy that I shared a little bit earlier. When the VMI Board of Visitors was made aware of the suggestion of an independent, non-biased investigation, they welcomed that opportunity, and I think all of us from the VMI family are looking forward to that independent investigation. I appreciate the governor appropriating the resources that he did. I hope it will not be quite that expensive, but I appreciate it, and I would ask the body to support it, and the VMI community welcomes it.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding governor's recommendation number 5? Seeing none, the question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with Governor's recommendation number 5? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 16.
Ayes 23, no 16. The bill is amended in accordance with the governor's recommendation number 5.
Mr. President.
Senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, having voted on the prevailing side by which we rejected amendment number 3, could we reconsider that vote so a member can adjust there?
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the vote by which the Senate rejected the governor's amendment number 3 be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The motion is agreed to. Question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor on amendment number 3? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 12, noes 27.
Ayes 12, noes 27. The bill is not amended.
Mr. President.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, could I respectfully ask that we stand in recess until 5:30 and the Senate Republican caucus gather in the hallway, please?
Without objection, Senate will stand in recess until 5:30.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's nice that it's just that one.
Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats.
Amendment 7.
Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President and members of the Senate, what Amendment 7 did was it removed the appropriation of $2 million to construct a hangar at the Accomack County Airport because we have a setup consisting of the Virginia Resource Authority, Virginia Aviation Board, and an airport revolving fund, which makes below interest rate loans, and we've had this since 2000, to these types of airports for, improvement. And I mean, we've done them even with hangars as small as what was in Tazewell County, as an example. So what the governor has done is he has removed the $2 million that was in the budget for the hangar in Accomack. Because we already, as I pointed out, we have a method of funding these.
Mr. President. Thank the Senator. Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Mr. President, speaking to the amendment.
Senators, the floor.
Guess what? I don't think that's a good idea. So, we give lip service in this body all the time about trying to help rural areas with economic development. So here is a relatively small project. There is a local match in place through land which the county has purchased for the location of this hangar in order to give one of our more stressed and economically challenged counties, my home county, a chance to really build upon some successes with UAV and drone activity from Wallops, and further to keep that economic activity to go to Salisbury, Maryland, which is exactly where it's headed if we don't give them the infrastructure they need. And again, this is debt. This is not a direct appropriation. It does not draw from transportation funds, and it is an opportunity to give this county to build upon the successes of Wallops, to have a symbiotic spin-off relationship with Wallops with UAV activities. And so I please urge the body to reject the governor's ill-thought-out amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rising to speak in the support of rejecting the governor's amendment, deleting the $2 million. For a decade, Mr. President, I had the privilege, and it was a privilege, of representing the Eastern Shore of Virginia. And during that decade, I learned an awful lot about the communities of Accomack and Northampton County. And I would say, Mr. President, just reiterating what the senator from Accomack has said, one is I developed an appreciation for just how fragile their tax base was and how thin their overall tax base was. I remember that one of the first times I ever went to the Eastern Shore, that I flew from Williamsburg, little airport with, it was about 2,800 feet on the runway at the time, and landed at downtown Milford Airport. And I was taken by a number of things. Is one, how important that airport was to the Eastern Shore of Virginia, and that even predated really the enhanced viability of Wallops. But there was a fair amount of activity both from the hangar category and from the flights that were coming in and out. And some of it had to do with what was then extremely important to the Eastern Shore of Virginia, and that was their vegetable crops and the ability to move some of those. And then, of course, Wallops Island has grown into a true diamond on the Eastern Shore, and the collaborative relationship and the interrelationship, the symbiotic relationship between what's going on at Melfa and Wallops is extremely important. And I would say, Mr. President, this is an opportunity really to help the Eastern Shore of Virginia, and I'm surprised that a native son would do something like this.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. To speak to the amendment.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Everybody knows that I don't represent the Eastern Shore, but most people realize that I've been dealing with Virginia aerospace and aviation for many, many years. And I spend a lot of time on the Eastern Shore, especially at Wallops Island and our commercial spaceflight facility there. You know, this is not a lot of money, it's a blip. But it's a blip here, but it's a blimp there. This is something that can truly help the Eastern Shore. We bend over backwards to bring economic development to the shore. It deserves it, and I hope we'll give them this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. What purpose, senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, y'all been talking about hangar a lot, so I thought I better say something.
Senator's the floor.
First, Accomack hangar is not my brother. And secondly, I support the senator from Accomack in the $2 million for his locality, but I would be even more supportive if this $2 million was being directed to the hangar from Augusta. Thank you.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard? Seeing none, the question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the governor's recommendation number 7? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 30.
Ayes 9, noes 30. The bill is not amended.
Amendment 8.
Senior Senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Distaff.
Mr. President, speaking against Amendment 8.
Senators, the floor.
Mr. President, this isn't a transportation project. It's not jumping the line. As a matter of fact, there's no transportation money that's used in this, so it doesn't fall within smart scale. Well, Mr. President, let me just describe real quick. We've got one road into and out of Sandbridge for 4,000 residents, and in the summertime to 800,000 visitors. And that road floods frequently. When that road floods and becomes unpassable, they have to open up the Navy base, and they have to compromise or open themselves up to compromise of a very sensitive naval mission. And Mr. President, this is about safety and security, it's about flooding resiliency, and it's about national security. So with that, I would hope we vote against this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. To speak to the amendment.
Senators, the floor.
And I apologize to the body for taking up more of your time, but I'll be brief. The other part that's really, really important to this besides Sandbridge is the naval station at Dam Neck. There are quite a few very sensitive missions that are planned and executed out of Dam Neck. And not only that, they have one of the very few live fire ranges that all of the airborne squadrons and most of the ship's companies that are located in Norfolk and Virginia Beach, that's where they train. That's a lot of people and a lot of cars, both at the beach and going into this critical military infrastructure as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please, this is very important. Please support Nimmo Parkway. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose, Senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll try to be brief. And up until a few months ago, I had a home in Virginia, second home in Virginia Beach, and became very familiar with that city. And I think it needs to be emphasized that when there are issues with the road system as it now exists, in order for the 4,000 residents of Sandbridge to get to their properties, they actually have to go through the base. They have to go through the base. And so it's much more than just a transportation issue. It is a security and safety concern of Dam Neck Annex. And I'm very fortunate that I have a letter outlining that from the commanding officer and the captain of the U.S. Navy of Dam Neck, and I would ask the body to reject the amendment.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw, rise?
About 6 or 7 years ago, we started this smart scale, method of selecting roads. And the reason we did this was to base our transportation decisions, and this, no matter how you cut it, it is transportation, it be based on actual need with respect to the traffic itself, congestion, and a variety of other factors. And we're going to, what's going to happen, and this is my prediction, is we're going to start, if we pass this, or we reject it, excuse me, you're going to start seeing more and more of these local favored projects showing up in the budget. And I think it was Speaker Howe was one of the people that was involved in the startup of the smart scale. And like I said, I mean, if we're going to start getting away from that and putting our pet projects in the budget, we're going to have a lot of problems. So I would ask that you accept the governor's amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard? Seeing none, the question is, shall the bill be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the governor? Amendment number 8. All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 19, noes 19, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 19, noes 19, Rule 36-1. Chair votes aye. The bill is amended in accordance with the governor's recommendation number 8. Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would move that we now waive the reading of the communications from the House of Delegates.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 3.
Ayes 35, noes 3. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived.
House Bill 5046.
Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adopt the governor's recommendation to House Bill 5046. And the bill, it has been determined that an emergency exists and that this act is enforced from its passage.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard? Seeing none, the question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation?
Mr. President.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, this is the same bill as Senate Bill 5080 that I talked about earlier, telemedicine, and it just puts an emergency clause on. So we passed that, we should pass this. So.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. The Senate adopts the governor's recommendation.
House Bill 5049 is not before us. House Bill 5058.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that we agree with the governor with regard to his amendment regarding House Bill 5058.
Senators, the floor.
What this does, Mr. President, if you look on the calendar, this just simply makes an exception. The bill has to do with marijuana as far as not stopping people regarding certain matters, but it does make exception for law enforcement. A law enforcement officer may stop a vehicle if it displays no brake lights that meet certain requirements. It also provides that a law enforcement officer may stop a vehicle if it displays no lighted headlights during the time periods set forth in the bill. And then finally, a technical amendment as well. So with that explanation, I move that the governor's amendment be adopted.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougall, rise?
Mr. President, as we did on the Senate bill, I would move that we separate amendment number 3 and vote on it individually.
Without objection, amendment number 3 will be severed. The question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation with regard to amendments number 1 and 2? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 1.
Ayes 38, noes 1. The Senate adopts the governor's recommendation with regard to amendments 1 and 2. Question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation number 3? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. The Senate adopts the governor's recommendation number 3.
House Bill 5064.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we
Mr. President?
agree to the governor's recommendation. This bill is identical to Senator Evans' bill that we passed earlier, Senate Bill 5088. And what this would do is the exact same things as that bill and provide benefits to a substantial number of people with rental agreements in the properties in Virginia.
Mr. President,
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator
maybe I
Edwards.
missed something, but I don't think we dealt with number 3 on the governor's bill recommendation with regard to the previous bill. We did?
We took a vote on that
Oh, okay,
of
I'm
2118.
I'm sorry.
Mr. President.
Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, just as we did on the Senate bill, could I ask that we sever amendments number 1 and 2 from amendments number 3 and 4?
Without objection, amendments 1 and 2 will be severed from amendments 3 and 4. Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, the question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation with regard to amendments 1 and 2? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 2.
Ayes 37, noes 2. The Senate adopts the governor's recommendation with regard to amendments 1 and 2. Question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation with regard to amendments 3 and 4? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 17.
Ayes 21, no 17. The Senate adopts the governor's recommendation with regard to amendments 3 and 4. Senator from Eastern Fairfax.
House Bill 5106.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Sarabel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd move that we adopt the governor's recommendation. And speaking to that motion.
Senators, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, you might remember this bill as being the bill that says if you go delinquent on your rent during the COVID pandemic, that information cannot be used against you in the application for a new tenancy for certain larger landlords. This amendment simply incorporates the definition of adverse action from the Fair Credit Reporting Act. The term adverse action is a term of art under that act, and our law, I think, was intended to supplement that, so it was important that we also bring that definition over from federal law. That's basically all this does.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard? Seeing none, the question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 16.
Ayes 23, no 16. The Senate adopts the governor's recommendation.
House Bill 5109.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that we agree with the governor's amendments to House Bill 5109.
Senators, the floor.
These have to do with law enforcement officer training and qualifications. It adds some technical amendments regarding the insertion of the language racially based policing, and also adds a couple of paragraph sentences regarding the option to require a candidate for employment to undergo psychological examinations. And with that explanation, I move that the governor's amendments be adopted.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, the question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. The Senate adopts the governor's recommendation.
Senate Bill 5115.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that we agree to the governor's recommendations on House Bill 5115. All this does is it provides an emergency clause to enable those people who have situations where either are paying rent and have fallen behind a little bit because of their lack of income during the COVID-19 period, and also for the landlords who own 1 to 4 units, because those are treated separately in the language we dealt with in terms of evictions and support for people in those situations. The bill passed with substantial margins, I think, during the session, and what this would do is it would make sure that the people can access the benefits of a delay in terms of any negative actions on foreclosure or the eviction type of situations, to allow them to be able to access funds such as the funds that have been provided in terms of the CARES Act funds and potentially other funds that may become available rather than being foreclosed or evicted from their rental properties.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, the question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 1.
Ayes 37, noes 1. The Senate adopts the governor's recommendation.
House Bill 5148.
Senator from Northwestern Fairfax. Okay, you didn't change? Okay.
Yes, Mr. President. I move to agree to the governor's recommendation.
Thank the senator. Do you want to speak to it?
Yes, this is the companion bill to SB 5034. I'm not sure why the sound is so bad. Sorry about that. This is the companion bill from the House to my bill, the Earned Sentence Credit 5034 that we just passed. I move that we pass the bill. It has technical amendments and changes the date of implementation.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, the question is, shall the Senate adopt the governor's recommendation? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. The Senate adopts the governor's recommendation.
That's it? That's it?
Is there any other business to come before the Senate? Do any senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, call the senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate do now adjourn sine die.
Thank the senator. As many as are in favor of the motion to adjourn sine die will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The Senate is adjourned sine die.